On May 5, 1869, Vilijam Mamler walks free. The city of New York has not been able to disprove that he is a bona fide photographer of ghosts. But it isn't a complete victory for Mamler, as the trial has left him in financial ruin and his reputation is destroyed. He's forced to close up his shop and return to Boston. By 1879, Mamler stops taking spirit photographs altogether. Not long after, his wife leaves him, and he dies in 1884, destitute and alone. So, what's the truth behind Mamler's methods? Did he perpetrate a massive fraud? Or can the impossible really be true? Were the ghosts real? Now, 150 years later, historian Brandon Hodge, who has studied the spiritual movement extensively, believes he can explain how Mamler was able to pull this off with his clients, both emotionally and practically.
Mamler was able to fool the nation because he engaged in some subtle sleight of hand. And this was at a day and age when communion with spirits was thought to be not only possible, but practical through the spiritualist movement. Mamler's photography comes at a crucial time when spiritualists are seeking to claim a sort of scientific legitimacy, and Mamler's results are able to provide what they think is tangible evidence of that at a time when the nation is already in deep mourning with the American Civil War. And so this was just seen as yet further proof of the validity of the spiritualist claims.
But even if Mamler was fraudulently taking advantage of people's desperation to believe, it doesn't explain how he tricked the masses, including leading photography experts.
James Wallace Black, himself a famous photographer in his own right, he was unable at the end to explain how the image had appeared on film. While Mamler's exact methods were never conclusively proven, during these long exposure times, one of Mamler's methods may have been pre-exposure of the plate, where only brief exposure of a subject, possibly dressed in a shroud or as a ghost, would be exposed to the plate. That plate would then be set aside, and when the next subject arrived, it would be inserted. And once the subject sat for several minutes for their own exposure, the end result would show them fully formed, as well as this ghostly image.
It's incredible to think Mamler's talents may have been less spiritual medium and more street magician, a street magician taking advantage of a grieving nation. But is it fair to write off Mamler so completely? For instance, consider this photograph, which Vilijam Mamler took in 1872 for someone who gave the name Mrs. Lindahl. Mamler took her picture, and it was only after developing it that he realized she had given a fake name. Mrs. Lindahl was in fact Mary Todd Lincoln. And if Mamler really didn't know that, how did this very familiar figure appear behind the former First Lady? Chills, anyone? Whatever you may think about Mamler's methods, his work really is haunting. From photographs from the beyond, our next case file takes us to a monument that is beyond belief. It is June of 1979, and I'm standing on 5 acres of empty farmland outside of Elberton, Georgia. A mystery man has just bought this land for $5,000. He goes by Robert C. Christian, but that is not his real name. And he's not a farmer or a rancher as you might expect. No, he has much bigger and stranger plans for this land. R.C. Christian wants to build America's Stonehenge. Right here, a huge granite monument with 10 principles for the future of humanity carved into it. The monument will be built, and mystery and controversy will surround it for decades. And now, for the very first time, we can reveal the secrets of perhaps America's strangest object, the unsettling monument known as the Georgia Guidestones. On a late afternoon in June 1979, a well-dressed, middle-aged man walks into the Elberton Granite Finishing Company with a strange request for the company president, Joe Fendley. He wants to build a monument, one that will rival Stonehenge, but with significant differences. R.C. Christian shows Fendley a scale model of his monument. He wants it to have messages etched into the stones to guide humanity on everything from human population to government to the use of language. The messages need to be written in English, Spanish, Russian, Chinese, Arabic, Hebrew, Hindi, and Swahili, the world's 8 most popular languages, plus 4 dead ones: Babylonian cuneiform, Sanskrit, Classic Greek, and Egyptian hieroglyphics. And like Stonehenge, he also wants the monument to be an astrological calendar, tracking the winter and summer solstices, as well as marking the equinoxes and phases of the moon. Fendley, whose company deals with wholesale orders of granite for buildings and tombstones, has never had a request like this, and he never will again. After listening to R.C. Christian's plans, he's convinced the man is crazy. So to get rid of him, Fendley quotes a price of several $100,000. Christian doesn't bat an eye. He just pulls out his checkbook and asks, "Who do I make it out to?" But a check won't do, and Christian needs to set up an escrow account at the local bank. But in order to do this, the Granite City Bank president, Wyatt Martin, needs R.C. Christian to give him his real name. Christian agrees after he gets a promise from Wyatt to never reveal his identity. Wyatt says he'll take Christian's secret to the grave. Christian is now ready to build his monument. This structure will consist of 6 huge pyramid blue granite stones and will weigh 120 tons, about the same as 20 African elephants. R.C. Christian has one last ominous request for the builders. The monument needs to withstand a cataclysmic event like a nuclear explosion. After months of construction, the guide stones are unveiled to a crowd of hundreds of people and dozens of journalists. But there is one person that's noticeably missing: the creator, R.C. Christian, who seems to disappear for good. But this only adds to the mystery of the guide stones. What kind of man spends hundreds of thousands of dollars building a monument and then doesn't attend its unveiling? And while the huge stone structure is impressive, it's the 10 guidelines carved into the granite that capture the public's attention.
Maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. Guide reproduction wisely, improving fitness and diversity. Be not a cancer on the earth. Leave room for nature. Leave room for nature.
A strange stone monument covered with cryptic messages written in 12 languages standing in the middle of nowhere. I don't know about you, but I have a few questions. Like, what is the purpose of the guide stones? What exactly do their messages mean? And why were they erected here, of all places? The one man with the answers is nowhere to be found. So it's up to investigators, journalists, and the public to interpret the message and find the meaning. And they argue over it for the next 40 years. There are several different interpretations for the principles carved in stone. Some believe the guide stones are a plan for rebuilding civilization after a catastrophic event like nuclear war. Or perhaps the 10 principles are a manifesto to usher in a new age of reason. But some believe that the stones showcase a more sinister purpose: the total control of the world's population by a select few. The first line of the guide stones makes a shocking decree: maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. In 1980, the world's population is already around 4.5 billion. To achieve the goal of keeping humanity under 500 million, almost 90% of the world's population needs to disappear. In other words, a mass genocide or extinction event. The very next line, guide reproduction wisely, improving fitness and diversity, is equally troubling. This sounds like an idea known as eugenics, a favorite of the Nazis, and considered highly unethical by modern society. And there's the sinister lines, unite humanity with a living new language, and let all nations rule internally, resolving external disputes in a world court. Avoid petty laws and useless officials. These seem to be promoting some kind of unified, one-world government, And this, if you believe the conspiracy theorists, is the very same goal as fabled sinister organizations like the Illuminati. For the conspiracy-inclined, the Guidestones aren't a plan for a better life on Earth. Its 10 messages are instructions for instituting a terrifying new world order, one that includes eugenics, depopulation, and a one-world government, all in service of a mysterious elite. It's a decree about the total domination of humanity as we know it, and it's right there, chiseled in granite for all to see. And the messages written on the Guidestones seem to have a literary source. In 1986, a book titled Common Sense Renewed is sent to every member of Congress. It expounds on the evils of overpopulation and suggests that having more than one child should be a punishable crime. The author listed on the book? You guessed it, Robert Christian. With such a controversial creed, it's not surprising that the monument becomes a magnet for vandalism. In 2008, someone spray paints "Death to the New World Order" on the granite stones. And in 2014, the FBI is even called in to look at incomprehensible markings scrawled on the monument. On July 6, 2022, just after 4 a.m., security cameras pick up a shadowy figure carrying a package as they run towards the monument. Seconds later, an explosion rocks the Guidestones. Claiming the structure is unstable, authorities knock down the Guidestones and cart the remains away to an undisclosed location. It is a quick and violent end for the granite structure that stood for 42 years. While the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, the ATF, and local police all investigate the bombing, no arrests are made, and they won't be made. Today, there are still no suspects in the Guidestones' destruction. But while the destroyer of the stones may remain a mystery, it seems its creator won't be much longer. After the Georgia Guidestones is destroyed by an explosion, investigative journalist Van Smith publishes a story on the internet.
As I spent a lot of time researching the monument, I began to realize that it was a much more serious and troubling monument than I had originally expected.
In his search to find answers about the Guidestone bomber, he comes across an obscure documentary film on the history of the Guidestones called Dark Clouds Over Eberton. In this documentary, they interview banker Wyatt Martin, the one man that knows R.C. Christian's true identity but refuses to reveal it. But Van Smith realizes something shocking in the video. The banker accidentally gives a visual clue that will lead to the unmasking of the monument's builder. During the filming, Wyatt shows the filmmakers some corresponding business letters between himself and R.C. Christian, and on one of those letters, there's a return address. According to Lake, the filmmakers, armed with the address, are able to track down R.C. Christian and reveal his identity.
So we discover that the address belongs to a medical doctor, Herbert H. Kirsten. The doctor died in 2005, which corresponds to the last letter that Wyatt Martin received. He was also a compulsive writer of letters to the editor, and his writing style and subjects that he would write on were very similar to what we see in Common Sense Renewed.
America should now begin to direct the attention of the world to solving the fundamental problem which threatens to engulf all humanity: the uncontrolled reproduction of our species. Rational planning of human reproduction is becoming increasingly essential. Contrary to widespread opinion, our nation is now overpopulated.
Those editorials hardly seem shocking for someone who seemingly chiseled "maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature" into granite. But if Dr. Kirsten's views were extreme, just wait till you hear those of some of his so-called friends.
Herbert Kirsten frequently bragged about his friendship with physicist William Shockley, who won the Nobel Prize in 1956 for being one of the co-inventors of the transistors. But Shockley went on to infamy in the 70s when he started endorsing eugenics plans. For instance, one of the things he wanted to do was to pay people who had IQs under 100 to get sterilized. If Kirsten's friendship with Shockley wasn't bad enough, we uncovered a letter that he wrote to a South Florida newspaper where he was endorsing the former KKK Grand Wizard David Duke, considered America's most well-known racist and anti-Semite, according to the Anti-Defamation League. Dr. Kirsten's friendship with Shockley and his support of David Duke is troubling, especially when you consider what was written on the face of the Georgia Guidestones and in the book Common Sense Renewed. These messages of the Georgia Guidestones about maintaining global population of under 500 million and guiding reproduction wisely, that it's actually a much more sinister message and deciding actually who will live and who will die.
Were the Georgia Guidestones some vast conspiracy? Probably not. They were likely just one man's pet project. Some build model railways, others build America's Stonehenge. But if Dr. Herbert Kirsten was the creator of the Georgia Guidestones, then the stones themselves are tainted by some very disturbing ideas. You could say they were much more dangerous than divine. And let's not forget our remaining mystery. While we now may know who created the Georgia Guidestones, we aren't any closer to knowing who destroyed them. But I guess they weren't made to withstand nuclear war, after all. I'm Džoš Gejts. Until next time, travel adventurously.